Well, we have to go to the next presentation. Our last presentation before the discussion is by Kathrin Passig. Ms. Passig is a pioneer of the digital age. She is a co-founder of the Zentralian Intelligenz Agentur in Berlin and of the blog Technik-Tagebuch. She won both the Ingeborg Bachmann Prize and the Audience Award in Klagenfurt and published, among others, the Lexikon des Unwissens and Internet, Segen oder Fluch with Sascha Lobo. The title of her presentation is The Joys of Not Writing. Why do we want to create art with computers? Welcome, Ms. Passig.
Hello. Can you hear me? Can you see my slides? I'm a bit in the dark here.
We can hear you,
Yeah,
and hopefully soon also see the slides.
So welcome to the Joys of Not Writing. This slide that I hope you can see because it's kind of important. Can you give me a signal here? Is everything? Ah, there it is. Okay. This is a letter that was written in 1953 by a computer scientist, British computer scientist Christopher Strachey, in collaboration with Manchester University's first computer. This is the MUC in the signature, Manchester University Computer. So this is almost 70 years ago now, and people have used this time to create lots more of art in collaboration with machines. Christopher Strachey himself used that same computer to create music with a computer that had no music making capabilities whatsoever, and also one of the first computer games. People have written quite a lot about about the fact that we do have a lot of art that has been created by humans in collaboration with machines, but what we don't really have is a lot of literature as to why they did it. So there's a bit of guesswork. Now, you might assume that everyone is perfectly clear on the why, that there is a consensus and no need to discuss the question at all, which I don't think is the case. But it's a lot harder to find any explanations of the reasons why people do that, why they want to do that. If you're looking for them, and I've been trying to find them for a couple of months now, you find some explicit explanations by artists, and you find a lot of things that you have to kind of read between the lines. And for this short talk, I picked 5 possible explanations as to why people like to collaborate with machines in creating art. This is out of a list, out of a longer list. Due to our time constraints, I will keep to those 5. And the first one is the old because it's their explanation. This is something that artists do not usually state as explicitly as George Mallory did when he allegedly was asked why he wanted to climb Mount Everest, and he's supposed to have said because it's there. It's not quite clear whether he actually said it, but it's been quoted a lot, and it is superficially a good explanation. The mountain is there and therefore it needs to be climbed. But when it comes to art, it's a bit difficult because this the statue is 500 years old, and it's still the option to create realistic marble statues of biblical figures is still as much there as it was 500 years ago, and yet you don't see a lot of young artists trying to create a reputation for themselves making these kind of statues. What you do get is, of course, many people who do it, but they are not trying to create a reputation as artists. They are trying to create a reputation as reliable Chinese workshops. So this is probably not a sufficient explanation. Many things are there. They are as much there as they were 500 years ago, even a bit more, since we have power tools, and it would be even easier, technically even easier to do that, but people don't. So it may sound like an explanation, but it really isn't. Another one, and that another attempt at an explanation, and you can find lots of material where people will say, well, I love the fact that I can create 1 million paintings a minute or an infinite number of poems by collaborating with machines, which sounds great. I've done it before. I think many people who create something art-like in collaboration with machines have done it before. There are two problems with this explanation, and one of them, I borrowed this example by Douglas Adams, so some of you may already know it. This is animal that I will call by its German name, because the German name is a lot better than the English name. It's the Thermometerhuhn, a thermometer chicken. It lives in Australia, and this is its nest, or rather it's not a nest, it's a large mound, an incubator mound that the bird creates from rotting organic matter. So the eggs go in there, and the incubator mound heats the eggs. It helps with incubation, so the bird doesn't have to sit on the nest. Now, this sounds like a nifty trick, something that's something that saves the bird the work of actually sitting on the eggs. But what they do is the male thermometer chicken spends about 10 months out of every year creating and maintaining this incubator mound. And this is quite similar to what many artists do when they create the structure that helps them create their art in collaboration with machines. This is a project of my own, has been around a couple of years now. It's a t-shirt generator that creates random t-shirt prints, random text, random graphics, and this is one of its many random claims, more shirts than atoms in the universe, which I like as a claim, but of course it is a lie. And that's another part of the problem. We don't always tell the truth, but it is a great thing to say about the things you create, that there's an almost infinite number of them, and that it doesn't take up all your time, that it is kind of automated. And it is an easy argument because everyone understands efficiency. So when people ask, and you're asked for a very short soundbite about why you do what you do, this is very easy to explain, and people will usually understand it and say, wow, an infinite number. So that is why it's popular, but I think it's not the reason why people start doing this in the first place. So it's kind of after the fact. Another attempt at an explanation is that creating art in collaboration with computers is demystifying creative work. Now there's two versions of this argument. One is that artists are actually making, at least sometimes, and you have to take my word that they do it, because when they do it, they tend to give very long explanations that absolutely do not fit on slides. So it's usually a complex argument saying that, yes, it makes it somehow easier to analyze the art that one is copying or creating. But artists will not usually say that this means the death of the author, or that it means that there's nothing mysterious about the act of creation. They will usually not say that all creation is purely mechanical, and that the fact that it can be created with a machine proves that it is purely mechanical. These claims are still easy to find, but I think they're usually used either by non-artists talking about art they don't like, or by artists who also talk about art by people they don't like, or about genres they don't like, saying that the fact that something very similar to these kinds of to that kind of art can be created by a machine, which usually not means by machine, doesn't mean by a machine, but in collaboration with a machine, that in some way proves that there is no mystery, that all these artsy-fartsy types are only pretending that these things are difficult and should cost a lot of money, and that in a way the emperor has no clothes at all. So this, while it is an interesting and a plausible idea, and one that definitely yields interesting material, it also doesn't work as an explanation why people start doing that, why they say, I'm going to create this or that using a machine. Just for fun is something that you really find quite often, and it is a good starting point for an explanation. But there are so many different kinds of fun, so that really doesn't explain a whole lot. It's an insufficient explanation, and it also creates a research problem, because most of the people who do things just for fun do not bother to create documentation to go into the archaeological record. So it's really hard when you're researching computational art to find many explanations by people who do things just for fun. They will do it once, they will show it in one place or somewhere for a short time, and then it disappears again. And it tends not to leave a whole lot of traces that you can easily find. So I picked one example of the different just for fun explanations, one that I that I find particularly convincing, and that is the similarities between creating computational art and gardening. This is what gardening usually does not look like, even though it is the illustration of the gardening article in Wikipedia. You do not usually shape the final result precisely in the way that you want it to look like. What you actually do instead usually is create the conditions for your garden to do approximately what you're trying to achieve, and then you wait, and then you look at the results, and the results are usually pleasantly surprising. Well, not always, but surprising anyway. I think this is quite similar to what happens with computational art. You try to create a system that will hopefully do approximately what you want it to do, and then you wait for the results, and then you decide whether you like them or not. Gardening is a popular activity with many people, and so I think this is one of the more plausible explanations. It's also one where you can actually find artists saying that this is how it works for them. This is from a book about Twitter bots. For many authors, adding to a bot is an especially pleasant kind of maintenance task, much like tending to a secret garden or maintaining a beloved car. Now, I would say maintaining the car is still a different kind of fun than tending to the secret garden. But there it is, the gardening metaphor. And there it is again, in an explanation by Harry Josephine Giles, an artist from Scotland, explaining things about Twitter bots as well. I've now made around 20 bots, and I feel like a farmer, quietly tending to my herd, my crops, feeding them, giving them to feed you. So this is one of the more intuitively plausible explanations among the I do it for fun. And Harry Josephine Giles is also one of the rather few artists that will do things for fun and still explain the details of what kind of fun and how exactly does it work. So it was surprising to me during that research to see how hard it actually is to find answers to the but why question. It's not, artists do not spend a lot of time usually explaining the reasons why they are creating computational art. And I learned a few things, and I'm trying to sum them up for those of you who might also be creating computational art. Maybe they're helpful to you as well. And the first one is try to know your reasons. Try to at least sometimes think about why you do what you do, and do not stop at the thought, I do it just for fun, because that's the starting point, but not really a sufficient explanation, because there are so many different kinds of fun. If you find something, do explain your work, and don't just explain it to your friends in the pub. Do it in a place where people like me, looking for explanations, can actually find it. And by find it, I mean, I need to be able to Google it in a reasonable amount of time, use any other search engine. That at the moment means that creating a video or a podcast usually will not do it. When you this goes for, so this goes for art that you maybe created last week, and I'm trying to find more information about now. But if you think about people trying to find out about you and your creations 50 years from now, then what you need to do is the exact opposite of what this sign says. You do need to leave traces. And as Christopher Strachey again with his letter, he is frequently quoted as one of the first people, or maybe the first one, who created something literature-like using a computer. And the screenshot you see is not what these letters originally looked like. There seems to be nothing left. There are no photographs, no original notes, nothing. The reason why he is mentioned in that context quite a lot is because he wrote a paper about it, a regular old-fashioned paper in a literary magazine in Britain, Encounter, in 1954. And this is what still exists. It's even, I couldn't even get an illustration of the original computer. So everything is gone, but this paper still stands. And that means that even if you do something just for fun, and I'm pretty sure that Christopher Strachey didn't say, I am creating great art. He probably will have said, no, I'm creating these letters with this large and hugely expensive computer just for fun. Even then, you should leave traces, maybe even especially then, because I suspect that this there's a reason why I couldn't find, well, it turned out to be pretty hard to find explanations by women, especially historic ones. Right now, some of the computational creativity genres, namely Twitter bots, are pretty much female dominated. And I don't see any reason why it shouldn't have been that way in the 1950s and 60s, when the whole the whole profession of computing was largely female one. So they must have been there, but I suppose they managed to leave fewer traces than the men working on the same things. And if you belong to any kind of minority in computing, it's even more important for you to document what you did, to leave those traces that people can find 50 years later when they're looking for them. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that it's women's own fault that they left too little traces in the archaeological record of computational art. These problems are largely systemic, and there's not much you can change about that working as an individual artist. But this is something that you can control. Leave traces, explain what you did, especially if you did it just for fun, which is a thought that I think women tend to have more often. They tend to say, oh no, I did this just for fun and for me and my friends, so no need to write a long paper in a magazine that will be around 50 years from now. And you need to leave those traces in a durable medium. Right now, this means usually books or papers. Your hardware won't last, your software won't last, the media you're using probably won't last. So you need to take pictures, screenshots, copies, whatever it takes. And if, I don't mean to say that the book is the only way to go, but if you do something in a less durable medium, you need to make sure that there are many copies of it around. So the worst solution, the worst bit of both worlds is doing something that is ephemeral and its material or medium and then only exists in one place. So if you do something, let's say an ebook, for example, it needs to exist, and that is fine because it exists in many places. And some of these copies might be around 50 years from now. So this talk is not going to be around 50 years from now, even though it's going to be up on the website for a while. So what I'm going to do is write it down, and I hope if you're doing anything in the genre of computational art that you think about the people who are going to give talks about this 50 years from now. Think about them and try to leave some traces. Thank you.
Thank you.